Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. This week was just bizarre on so many levels. I mean, the majority of what I actually called debuting last week didn't even happen here, and some of the stuff that came in to replace them, yeah, let's just say it's very weird and not exactly a very good week, all things considered, but we'll get into it. And man, proof of that is just how tiring it is seeing Miles on it by Marshmello and Kane Brown hold number 1 on Hot Dance. I mean, seriously, it's losing every single category this week and it's just not doing well. The only reason it's up this high is because there's nothing else competing against it right now. That's a serious problem. I mean, case in point, Forever Young by David Guetta, Alpha Villain, Ava Max number 2, which saw its entire radio support just completely plummet at a really sharp rate, and given that that's all it has, it's going to be gone and likely fall out from number 2 next week, or at least a few weeks after. I can't complain. Then there's the interesting case of the Day's Notion remix by Crystal at number 3, which still has really good streaming, but given that that's all it's got, and the fact that it is stalling out there, unfortunately, it's going to be on its way out soon. That's a damn shame. Then there's Slow Motion by Marshmello and the Jonas Brothers at number 4, which is actually getting a decent amount of radio support now out of nowhere, even if it did stall out initially. Even though it's got absolutely nothing in the way of streaming to really help it, I don't expect this to be as big as Miles on it, and thank God for that. But what could pose a real challenge, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, is Chess by Joyful up to number 5. And look, it's got a big ways to go to even get any higher at this point, considering all it's got is really good streaming, but that is gaining at a big rate, and considering the TikTok memes are not dying off, yeah, this might end up sticking around, and that's kind of weird to admit. And hell, it even managed to overtake Move by Adam Port and Stripe featuring Marchi at number 6, and really, again, this one should be on its way out. It's sticking around far too long. Next, the two songs that really only rebounded to fill in space, with Under Your Spell by Snow Strippers at number 7 off of the back of good streaming, and Did I Tell You That I Miss You by Adore actually up to number 8, and this one's kind of interesting. It's not on the Hot Rock Alternative charts at the moment, but the fact that it overtook the song Beneath It, which was already above it last week, and by a considerable amount as well, that's kind of interesting, and it's a shame it's not as good as said song. And speaking of which, Never Ender by Justice and Tame Impala is at number 9. Really, this one doesn't surprise me, considering while it does have good radio, the streaming is unfortunately not very strong on this one at the moment. It is what it is. It's at least stepped past 26 weeks, so I can see it having some staying power, and I can't complain either. It's a great song. And finally, the song that made all these songs jump up, or at least see some considerable positive movement, Dreaming by Dom Dollar featuring Daya at number 10. Look, I'm not surprised that it fell this hard. Really, at this point, I'm just expecting all top 5 debuts on this chart to fall like this, and given that the streaming is still really good on this one, I expect it to stick around, and that's great. Which is something that I can't really say about our falls and fall-offs, where in this particular case, we didn't really have a ton of note outside of Kisses by Bless and Cameron Watson featuring BB Close leaving yet again, and considering how close that song is to 20 weeks, it probably won't come back at this point. And the big one, Love Potions by BJ Lips and Princess Paparazzi after 26 weeks. As one of the grossest songs that's charted in recent memory, I have no complaints about this one going, even if it's going to make the year-end list. Goddamn wonderful. But the wild thing is that outside of Dreaming by Don Dollar featuring Daya falling in the top 10 and counting it as a fall this week, we only had 2 other notable stories that are worth talking about outside the top 10. The first is Chasing Paradise by Kygo and One Republic actually rebounding to 14, which, considering how hard it was falling for the past few weeks and the fact that it doesn't have any sort of radio support, that's telling that people are actually getting on board with this one, and really I include myself, it's a really good song. And the other one, Stephanie by Clooney, Young and May and Int Raw, is actually only down to 22, which, considering it was only here because of a big remix boost, the fact that it's actually sticking around this well is really interesting, and it might end up pulling another The Day's case, considering both the original and the remix are getting decent numbers of streaming on their own, and really with them combined together, I'm not surprised that this stuck around. Really promising to see though, it keeps growing on me. But anyways, 3 debuts here to talk about, where at least all of them are interesting, although we're starting off with number 25, Phonk de BELEZA by Nateki and Scythermane.
Lá no quarto, tomando tá bom no rabo, tal do TBT, das bucetas de mel. Hoje você...
I mean, right off the bat, this one's actually pretty damn notable, considering that Scythermane is not only the first Phonk artist to debut week after week, which is incredibly rare in the scene, but is also the first name that's debuted after the chart change that's managed to get multiple songs charts in the top 25. Really impressive there. But anyways, here's a collab with another Phonk producer who has 8 versions of this song in their top 10 on Spotify, although it is more notable that they actually have a pretty damn big song that's bigger than this, which is really interesting. I mean, it didn't chart, but you would know Nateki from a collaboration with Playermain on Midnight, which has over 200 million streams. It's one of the biggest Phonk songs that didn't cross over. But anyways, honestly, this isn't half bad. I kind of like this a lot more than the Brazilian Phonk songs I've heard. Yes, it's way more Brazilian Phonk sounding than Nunca Muda. Really, right off the bat, I'm not a fan of the cultural appropriation yet again. And while the mixing is complete garbage, it at least tries to take some elements from Brazilian funk music that's actually gotten some sort of revival recently, and I can kind of see the appeal of this in a similar way. I mean, you've got the horns, the vocal samples, a really more bouncy and upbeat kick, boosting the entire track forward even if it does clip the mix, and even if the overall production turns into a complete clusterfuck of bad layering and mixing by the end, it at least takes from the elements of the Brazilian funk scene that I can kind of enjoy. Again, I don't like that scene very much, but I can at least understand why people are trying to replicate it. I mean, it's not something I put on often or really come back to, and again, the cultural appropriation is a big problem in this scene, and this artwork does not help matters, but you know what, it could have been far worse. It's fine. Number 21, Tell You Straight by jigitz.
You want a life as a wife, but that's not my day. You'd be at home all alone looking at the rain. I'm just gonna tell you straight, baby, I'm a...
So on Talk of the Charts, one of my good friends actually pointed out that this could actually debut on this chart on the back of surprisingly good streaming numbers, even despite this guy being a newcomer, and well, yeah, that's exactly what happened, and fair play too. So for context, jigitz is a speedy house and garage producer from Los Angeles, which is a bit of a different case in comparison to a lot of the UK acts who do this sound. It's at least interesting that Americans trying it. And he's reached a stage now where he's building a pretty damn decent following, to the point where this song blew up on TikTok and gained a pretty decent amount of streaming despite only coming out in early February and not exactly being the sort of thing that you'd expect to cross over here. And given his general positive reception, I shouldn't be surprised this is here, and when I heard the song, actually I really like this. This is really damn good. I mean, the first comparison that came to mind was Kisses by Bless, right down to the shorter length, the much more grittier and intense production, and the speedier house beat that allows for some more groove and sharper percussion to come in. I actually really like how this sounds, especially when you have that really satisfying bass underscoring everything and that willowy vocal sample adding some nice beautiful textures to it. Again, it's really sharply produced. Hell, it even has time for a Jersey club switch up that honestly was executed a lot better than I expected. It flows into all the intensity around it pretty damn well, and considering how a lot of speedy house from this particular era actually has charted mainly from the UK, seeing an American artist do it and actually get some genuine organic momentum on his own, yeah, that's pretty interesting, and the song is really damn great as well. I can't complain about it being here. This is definitely worth checking out. Really cool find here. Number 13, HGT, Hostile Government Takeover, Dance Remix by AGiftFromTodd and Vinny Marchi.
If you're saying, wait a minute, do we have to stop this? We had one, but you didn't want that lady in office.
Okay, so I feel like this was kind of overdue, especially with the current administration and the fact that a lot of the younger generation are experiencing inner turmoil in the current state of the United States. So for context, this song was originally made by the TikToker AGiftFromTodd and seems to be an impromptu song he made in response to the current administration's continued failings towards supporting minority groups, which he happens to be in. And considering it's a pretty simple and novel song that's honestly quite interesting in terms of its content and tries a lot harder than a lot of these impromptu songs do, I'm not remotely surprised that a remix of it actually exists. And given that a few weeks after release it was getting a bit of momentum from acts like John Oliver shouting it out, as well as this remix by Vinny Marchi that's been blowing up on TikTok and sales to a quite frankly ridiculous level, it was able to cross over here, even though I don't expect it to last next week. Now obviously I had my skepticism over this, considering the last time a song like this blew blew up in a dance remix form was Man in Finance, and I think we're better off all forgetting that that song existed. But I'll give Vinny Marchi credit for actually turning this into a proper song. It gives the vocals more processing to make it really hard to tell where the original source came from, and honestly, given that it's a TikTok fragment, that's really impressive. And the production is actually closer to Starter House with some nicer synths and some really good atmosphere to this. Again, it feels a lot more professional than a lot of TikTok-based remixes actually are. Now, obviously, for a song like this, it's trying to sand out some of the more political touches of the original track, especially on the pre-chorus where there's a very obvious Kamala Harris reference that could make this song extremely dated really fast. But I will give credit where it's due. This is a lot better of a remix than I was expected, and even though I don't expect it to have any staying power considering these sort of novelties don't last that long after a few weeks, I am at least interested in seeing where this goes. This isn't actually all that bad at all. In fact, I actually quite like it. Check it out. Whereas where I do have complaints about comes in the dance pop songs chart, and it seriously was fucking dead this week. Billboard, this chart is becoming more and more worthless the more it stumbles along. I mean, seriously, we only had one dropout being I'll Do It by Heidi Montag, which I think everyone expected after the back of the Pitbull remix losing momentum, and it got replaced by Love For You by Lovely Laurie and OVG at the very bottom of 15 with no debuts and barely any movements that are worth talking about. So let's move on, and seriously, I'm at the point where I want the original chart back. This sucks. But thankfully, both dance streaming and dance sales came in to effectively give me more to talk about. I can't complain. In the former, while we only lost Wake Me Up by The Weeknd and Justice, it at least got replaced with Latch by Disclosure featuring Sam Smith at number 15, and really it's a classic song I can't complain about being back. But otherwise, both Miles On It by Marshmello and Kane Brown at number 2 and A Day's Notion remix, they saw some expected rebounds as you'd expect, primarily because Born Again by Lisa featuring Doja Cat and Ray expectedly fell down to number 4, but given the radio support that this has, I expect it to stick around and likely rebound soon. But besides that, the other stories are Open Hearts by The Weeknd at number 10 and Sao Paulo by The Weeknd and Anita down to number 6. Again, these are expected losses, as well as Feel Good Inc. by Gorillaz being the biggest gainer this week at number 8. Really. But what I think is more notable comes in dance sales, where we had a decent amount happen this week, including 2 unique debuts. Nice. I mean, again, Born Again by Lisa featuring Doja Cat and Ray fell down to number 8 here. Again, radio is going to save this one, and on this chart it doesn't matter as much if it falls. And with Dreaming by Dom Dollar featuring Daya at 11, and A Day's Notion remix by Crystal at number 12. Again, these don't really need the sales to really stick around. Just saying. But the positive movements matter more than anything, primarily in the comebacks here. Yes, Titanium by David Guetta featuring Sia as blatant chart filler at number 15, but Now or Never by Bon Jovi and Pitbull gained genuine momentum at number 10, and more importantly, the big return came for Dancing on My Own by Robin, where against all odds it's now hit a new peak on this chart at number 4, and really it's a classic dance song. I cannot complain about it coming back, and it's really interesting to see how high it got. I hope it sticks around. Oh, and Under My Rules, HGT Hostile Government Takeover Dance remix by AGiftFromTodd and Vinny Marchi debuted at number 2, and I don't have to cover it. Again, it's really telling how high this debuted, and I don't expect it to stick around either. But that actually leaves 2 unique debuts, amusingly starting off with number 14, Nel Blue Dipinto di Blue Volare by Dolce Vita. Never thought I'd have to talk about this particular original track in any form on this series, especially if I stuck with my original formatting. This would have completely fallen under the radar. So for those of you who aren't familiar with either Eurovision or hits in the 1950s, the original song by Domenico Modugno was a massive hit, to the point where it hit number 1 on the Hot 100 in the 1950s and became one of the biggest Italian songs of all time. And especially considering that Domenico didn't even win the Eurovision Song Contest in 1950, 1958, it reached a level that quite frankly the winner of that year could not even come remotely close to earning. And really this doesn't surprise me considering the San Remo Music Festival even at the time was an absolute tour de force in terms of mainstream hits. Seriously, the amount of big names that came out of that particular music festival is really notable. It would eventually become a football chant staple for the years following, especially after Domenico's unfortunate passing in 1994, to the point now where it's getting a ton of remixes, including this one by an Italian duo who only have 2 releases on their Spotify as of recording this, with this one coming all the way back in 2021. They've barely released anything since. So seeing this chart made me at least curious, especially considering how far removed it was from when it was released, and yeah, I'm disappointed by this one. I mean, I at least get the appeal. It's going for more of that smoother European house sound with the guitars, those synths, and even some xylophones that at least are interesting. But man, the percussion just completely kills the vibe for me here. It sounds so dry and lifeless and does not give this track any sort of groove whatsoever, which considering the sunny atmosphere it's trying to make, yeah, that's not really all that excusable at all. Now obviously given the copyright laws around the original, I wasn't expecting them to use the original vocals here, but man, the lady singing on this track, she does not sound good at all. She's buried under so many layers of instrumentation with not much in the way of presence or personality, and again, Domenico runs circles around her. I mean, I get the appeal. It seems to have charted off of a Netflix documentary and at least has some sort of organic groundswell considering it's got over 22 million streams as of recording this. But yeah, I just don't get this one. It's okay at best. Number 9, Last Night I Dreamt I Fell in Love by Alok and Kylie Minogue.
That emotion taking over me. The night was ours, we're seeing stars. Last night I dreamt I fell in love.
Whereas this one at least makes a little bit more sense. I mean, Alok's been a pretty consistent name as of recently, and Kylie Minogue's got the sort of cult following much and more in an older generation, where anything she releases is going to have a chance at charting on dance sales. It happened with the Oliver Heldens collab 10 out of 10, and it happened here as well. So I was hoping this would be good, and honestly, there's a lot to like about this. I mean, I really dig the production here. I really like the more funkier house sound, and even if the drops do feel a bit dry, they've got this really great horn lead underscoring everything that sounds really good. Honestly, it's the sort of sound that I expected Alok to go down considering Deep Down was a big hit, and really I'm not complaining. He's actually pretty good at this, especially when you have that bass line that's so satisfying. Honestly, it drives this whole track forward, and even if it is a bit short, it does sound great. Now, obviously, the big factor that was going to make me concerned about this was Kylie Minogue. I mean, even putting aside that she uses so many vocal effects on her recent material, her vocals have taken a beating over the years, and especially with a groove this funky, I was a bit worried, and honestly, she isn't as bad as I expected here. Yes, the vocal effects once again do not match the vibe, and she sounds a lot more zoned out than she should, but I will be fair and say that it actually fits into the more dream-like vibe of this particular track, where she's going for that theme of falling in love while dreaming, and honestly, her more laid-back delivery actually works in that regard. So yeah, it's pretty good. I do get why it missed the hot dance charts, considering it's not exactly something that's mainstream friendly at this point, considering that it sounds a lot different than what people expect, and Kylie Minogue's streaming numbers have just really underperformed. But while it does have its problems, I actually found this really enjoyable. I would actually come back to it. Pretty damn good song. But for now, let's talk about the most disappointing chart this week, Dance Mix Show Airplay, where, yeah, it got really underwhelming this week. For the top 10 though, we got a landmark moment where we had back-to-back drum and bass number ones, as against all odds, Push the Tempo by Sub Focus featuring KDB hit number 1. And I don't expect this to stick at number 1, it's already losing spins really damn hard, but the fact that Sub Focus actually got there is genuinely impressive. Congratulations to him. And hell, Cave by Dom Dollar and Tovlo only fell out to number 2. Again, back-to-back drum and bass tracks. It's really impressive how well both of these are doing, and they're kind of inseparable at this point, huh? But what likely will take number 1 next week is Hypnotized by Anima and Ellie Goulding at number 3. I mean, it's just surging at a massive rate at this point, and it's probably going to hit number 1 on Mediabase at the end of this week, so I really expect this to have a ton of staying power. Might even last more than 1 week at number 1, you never know, I can't complain at all. Then there's the natural fall of I Only Smoke When I Drink by Namino at number 4. Again, it's on its way out naturally, but the fact that it actually hit the top 3 at all for this guy's first breakthrough single was really impressive. Can we give him more charting hits, please? His discography's really good. But at least for now, it's above Forever Young by David Guetta, Alpha Villain, Ava Max at number 5, where it's losing massive momentum on this particular Airplay chart as well. And given that pop radio is throwing this out, it's going to lose mixed zone supports. I can't complain about this being on its way out finally. Following that is the expected jump into the top 10 and a newcomer with Someone Else by GT Office at number 6. Really, I'm not surprised. He's a safe name for this format, and even if the song is pretty forgettable, I'm at least not that surprised to hit the top 10. Also, that it actually beat out Visions of You by Halo at number 7, which, yes, is still gaining, and at the rate both of these songs are going, I expect them to get even higher, but really, I just wish the better song got higher over Someone Else. Come on now. I mean, at least they are gaining, unlike I'm Going Out by Steve Aoki, Sam Feltz, Xandra, Noel Rogers, and Zach Abel at number 8. Again, this one's gaining really slowly. It's not looking promising moving forward for its momentum, but in a much more insane story that I don't think anyone expected would get this high, the first time that Monster Cat has hit the top 10 since Trippin' by Conroe in 2019. Yep, it's Heaven Knows by Cascade and Punctual featuring Poppy Bascom at number 9. And look, it's a great song. I have no complaints about it being here, but I'm still shocked that Punctual actually managed to get a top 10 on this chart with this and not do it all again. Just saying. Oh, and Tantalizing by Tiesto and Soki Siren fell down to number 10, but really given that it rebounded on spins, I expect this to jump up much higher. Kind of conflicted on that, to be honest. But man, this week was really quiet where the falls and fall-offs did not really matter that much at all. Really, the only notable dropouts are Die With A Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars and Break My Love by Rufus Du Sol, both of which are mid-tier year-end placements at best, but they at least will make the top 100. I can't complain about either of them leaving, especially Die With A Smile. You've got a new single coming through, that one's great. Let's move forward to Abracadabra. And surprisingly, we only had 4 falls this week, and all of them were not surprising in the slightest. Being knocked out of the top 10 naturally, Told You So by Martin Garrix and Jackson number 12, and Forever by Hugo and Diplo featuring Malou and Una at 14. Further down is a continued loss for Part of Me by Arm Van Buren featuring Lewis 3 at 22. Expect this to be gone next week with the 20-week rule. And even further down is Akon's Beautiful Day by Akon, finally losing a bit of momentum at 31, which, considering that it's combined with its pop airplay just utterly free-falling, yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. The remix is going to help it stick around a bit higher than it should, but really I don't expect it to last either. Good riddance. But man, if you thought that the jumps would matter, they just straight up didn't this week. I mean, outside of Someone Else by GT Office in the top 10, as I said before, we only had 2 songs jump this week, and both are on complete opposite sides of the quality spectrum. Oh my god. I mean, on one hand, BMF by SZA continues its nice run to 23, with pop airplay being fully on board with this one. I expect it to hit the top 20 soon. But on the other hand, Crash by Loud Luxury is up to 13, which, considering it's the worst song charting right now next to Forever Young, this is just about the worst outcome it should have gotten. It should have flopped and underperformed. Thanks, guys. But thankfully, when you get onto our debuts, 2 of them are songs that I've already covered, although under my eligibility rules, the only one that I'm skipping is Abracadabra by Lady Gaga, debuting at 32. So much for me wanting that song charting here. It's actually the highest debut here, and I expect it to have a ton of staying power considering the sound. That's great to see. But ironically, the first debut here is a song that I've already covered as well, unfortunately, being number 40, Let's Go by Jaden, Bojsen, and David Guetta.
The fuck, get the fuck. It's 9 p.m. on a fucking Friday. It's 9 p.m. on a fucking Friday. Get the fuck up. We're going to high. Let's go.
Already talked about this one a few months ago, but man, it just gets worse the more I hear it. I mean, the production has some knock, and I will admit that the original track by Jaden Bojsen at least has some energy and groove behind it. I can at least understand the appeal there. But this hashtag selfie ripoff vocal performance from Sammy Brielle is just not working for me at all. I get it's trying to hype people up, but it really just sounds annoying as hell, especially with the Valley Girl vocals. And especially when a song sounds this dry, and David Guetta stands out any of the raw elements that made the original stand out. Yeah, I've got no use for this. Not the worst song that David Guetta has been involved in this year, and I really have no expectations this is going to have any sort of staying power, but it's not good either. Let's move on. Number 39, Loving You by Kideko and A-Trak. Wait, what the hell is A-Trak? A-Trak doing on this chart? I know he's been consistently releasing mainstream music since his Hot 100 breakthrough in, oh my god, 2015, but seriously, he's the sort of name that you'd expect to chart on the club charts, not here, especially with the newcomer Kideko, who's been building a decent amount of momentum in his own rights, and it's the sort of name that has had no momentum in the States before now. And yeah, after hearing this, I'm still confused why the hell this is even here. I mean, it sounds like a UK club chart filler track with some really cool synth production, a soulful vocal sample that feels way too close in the mix, and even these weird instrumental switch-ups to more of a poppier sound on the second verse that honestly sound awkward as all hell, especially when you transition back into the beat of the original sample by Soul Dog, which sounds really clumsily executed before going back into the drops, and said drops being the definition of club grade material that doesn't really have anything that stands out, even if they don't sound bad, all things considered. I mean, it's just weirdly forgettable, and considering that both of these names are pretty established and popular, that's really disappointing for me. I mean, it's not bad, but I have no reason to ever come back to this. And finally, number 33, I Follow Rivers by Tiesto featuring Oaks. But man, if the alternative is Tiesto destroying a Leaky League classic with his horrible excuse for production in 2024 and 2025, yeah, I might take A-Trak instead. I mean, after the horrific year that Tiesto has had, I was dreading this, even despite Oaks being a damn good singer. She probably wasn't gonna save this, and yeah, that's exactly what happens. This is really bad. I mean, at least Oaks sounds like she's trying, even if she's got some horrible backing vocals behind her for the hook that sound dreadful, and her vocal mixing in general just does not sound good at all. It's a damn shame she can't even save this herself, because my god, this production is horrible. The utter lack of atmosphere, the weak bass line, the drops that barely do anything to distinguish themselves from the verses, the utterly wasted use of that original sample that's so timeless at this point, and even as someone who's not been super familiar with it, I can understand its place and understand why people absolutely love it. I can kind of get the appeal there. And when the only thing differentiating the drops is this really poor David Guetta-esque lead that has somehow even less atmosphere than David Guetta has done recently, yeah, I've got absolutely no use for this. I mean, knowing our luck, it's unfortunately going to be bigger than the Leaky Lee original, and that's just a goddamn crime, because really, aside from Tiesto being a very reliable name for dance airplay, what does this add to this chart? I mean, it just straight sucks, and it proves that Tiesto's past year is continuing to translate into 2025. God help us all. This is really bad. So that was this weekend. Man, I am underwhelmed here. I mean, it's really telling that outside the obvious best would tell you straight by Jigitz, which is running away with the best of the week, nothing else really stood out here as particularly notable. I mean, I'm gonna give Honourable Runner-Up to Last Night I Dreamt I Fell in Love by Alok and Kylie Minogue, but even then, it's not a great song. On most other weeks, it probably wouldn't get there. But for worst, okay, outside of I Follow Rivers by Tiesto featuring Oaks is the easy worst. I don't think anything else particularly stood out as extremely bad here. So I'm gonna give the Dishonourable Runner-Up to Let's Go by Jaden, Bojsen and David Guetta. Again, it's souring on me in a way that I really don't like, and even if I can understand the appeal of the original track, this remix does not do it for me at all. Next week, man, I got nothing. There's really no notable releases that have came out this past week that are worth talking about, and given that it seems to be a pretty dry period for charts right now, I expect some surprise debuts in here, and I can't complain. I at least hope the quality is better than this week. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.